All right, we got our spooky music intro. This is Dr. Craig Banks, and I'm here with Dr. Jim Morgenstern. We're on Optimal Function. This is episode 15, not 19, although it should be 19 based upon the craziness going on. We did the spooky music because that seems to be what all the media is doing with everything. You know, even your interludes between like Fox Music or Fox News or CNN or whatever. They come back from commercial and it's like, so I just figured.
The world is ending.
Yeah.
What's the update?
Zombie apocalypse is at hand and everybody's panicked. And Jim and I are still seeing patients, which is good. We are an essential health provider, and we'll talk about a little bit why that is later. But, you know, we've been living through this, man. You guys are all doing it too. I think you all have come to trust both of us as a little bit of a maybe reasonable voice in the craziness sometimes. So that's why we wanted to do this episode now. Jim's a couple weeks away from having a baby.
Yeah, this is quite the interesting time to be having a baby. You know, it's a new normal, and there's a lot of updates that we're getting from the hospital. The most recent one is, you know, they're not allowing family to show up. Like, so no grandparents, no aunts, no uncles. It's just me and Allie, and hopefully that doesn't change to the point where they ask me to leave after the delivery. You know, there's some rumors that might be kind of what's happening, but that's in other states right now. So right now in Ohio, I am allowed to be there with her the whole way through up until discharging, and we can go home with the baby. So, yeah, this has been quite the most interesting couple of weeks. So, but just like everybody else, we're living day to day and trying to, you know, sort through the facts and the fear tactics, like we'll kind of dive into here and try to make sense of it all.
Yeah. And there's a lot of that right now. There's a lot. And we're going to start just delving right into it. You know, let's talk a little bit about the coronavirus in and of itself. You know, so this is COVID-19. All right, they're calling it a novel coronavirus. So basically what that means is that it's new. They hadn't really had that on record before. They didn't know that one existed. They're saying that it originated in China in December, which I think is crap because I have some stories that I'll tell here in a minute. But it's not like the only coronavirus. Okay, and people were flipping out. They saw in Lysol containers, and they were using this for some conspiracy theories like Lysol already says it kills coronavirus. So coronavirus is also SARS and MERS and other viruses. So they're just types of that, and that's based upon how it looks and under a microscope. And like if you're looking at it on a two-dimensional thing, it's got these little spikes, so it looks like the corona of the sun on a 3D model. And they made this cool little ball looking thing with the spikes coming all out, and that's part of how it kind of goes in and attaches in the lungs and creates respiratory distress. But they're usually in animals. So the coronaviruses rarely affect humans. Their thought process on this whole patient zero was that they were eating bats in the Wuhan market, and, you know, maybe yay, maybe nay, I don't know. But it rarely affects humans, but it can be spread pretty easily, unfortunately, at least this one. It lives on surfaces for kind of a long time. We know it can be airborne, and I think it's what's a recent stat, like 3 to 4 hours airborne. It can kind of
and it's got, I think that if you think of you know, right now in Ohio we've got springs kind of coming in, and, you know, it's got the dust and stuff kind of like actually right now in the basement kind of flying around. There's droplets, so it's airborne for the first, I think, 6 feet. That's kind of why they've asked us to keep 6 feet of separation in between individuals when we're, like, let's say at the bank or if we're checking out at the grocery store, because that's where it's most apt to cling to other things as it's coming out of one person's mouth.
So some fool researcher at MIT decided to do some study, and they said it can go for 27 feet after a sneeze. So now he was like, we should all stay 27 feet away. And like the guys at the White House and all the task force and pretty much every other doctor alive was like, get out of here, man.
Yeah.
That's
I think the more important is trying to figure out Yeah, that'd be a hell of a sneeze.
Right.
But how long it stays on material versus skin versus, let's say, facial hair. So it's just, they're trying to figure out other ways to judge how long it does stay on certain surfaces.
Yeah, I guess plastics are maybe a few days. So, I mean, obviously,
What was that? You said plastics?
Plastics, I think, is a few days. So that's kind of one of the big concerns for plastic countertops and whatnot. So obviously, they're given a lot of recommendations, and we'll talk about some of those recommendations in a minute. But I want to talk a bit about the stats that are out there right now, and these are the most up to date that I saw. This is off of the Johns Hopkins worldwide tracker thing, literally less than 15 minutes ago. So worldwide, we're looking at 1,056,777 cases. Of that, there's 55,132 deaths. They're saying 221,595 are recovered. Big difference in there. Obviously, that's not accounting for about 700 and some thousand people. I don't know if they're still saying that those have the disease or what. They just haven't considered them fully recovered with 2 negative tests or whatever. But that equals out, if you're believing that stat, to about a 5% death rate of the confirmed cases. In the U.S., there's 245,658 cases, 6,069 deaths, 9,311 recovered. That equates to about a 2.5% death rate. Now, you and I both know that those aren't really the rates that they're talking about necessarily, and there's all kinds of projections and what. And here's the thing: stats don't matter. Stats just don't matter, and there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, in the United States, we just started testing for this in March. Okay, and everybody's like, flatten the curve, and I don't disagree. And I don't disagree from the hospital perspective. You don't want to overwhelm, people in the hospital. We clearly have much more limited resources than we ever realized, myself included. We really weren't prepared for something that was a true pandemic. I mean, God forbid this had been like a flesh-eating disease. We'd all be dead. Right. So we do need to keep that down. But we also have to look at, when we see this giant spike in the end of March in the U.S. cases and say, well, we're not even at the peak. How do you know? How do you know? I'll be quite honest. I would almost guarantee I had this in December. I was very sick almost the entire month of December. I'm never sick. I had a cough. I had fever a couple days. Courtney had it too. We spent nights where I'd be on the couch for 3 nights in a row because I didn't feel well, and then she'd be on the couch trying to just sort of stay away from each other. It didn't really matter. We were both sick. But it was horrible, and it sucked, and I got over it. I didn't go to the doctor. I didn't get any medicine. I just did my normal routine.
I want to interject here for a second. So, and that's just for other people to realize, like, how many times do you go to your doctor and like, oh, it's just a stomach bug, because they can't figure out what it is. Or, let's say up here in Ohio, sometimes you can get seasonal allergies in the late fall, because this year it didn't actually get cold enough. So ragweed sometimes will feel that, like, it's tough to breathe. You'll get that itchy throat. I'm sure there's like a little bit of similarities in between different kinds of, symptoms that you might have for different illnesses. But how many times, like, you could just brush it off that I was down and out for a week, who knows, and you're not going to go get tested now because it's months later. But a lot of people, even just in common conversation, the past couple of weeks have reported very similar things. December, January, they were down and out for a couple of weeks.
Yeah. And I had a chiropractor friend of mine on Facebook told the story, and his dad owned a fishing store, and he had a group of Chinese businessmen that would always come buy stuff and then go fish. And in October, they came down, and the one dude was just on his deathbed, just coughing and sick and looked horrible. And sure enough, the guy who owned the fishing store, the chiropractor's father, did get sick. He was very ill, same type of thing, multiple weeks. But he recovered. He was fine. The guys came back in from China the next time, and the other dude wasn't there, and he said, and he had died.
Wow.
And now this is October. Okay. The guy died, Guess where they were from? Wuhan, China.
Wuhan.
Yeah. So
Wow.
the disease has been in the United States long before January. There is no patient zero in Washington State. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Let's be real. How many people travel back and forth between China and the U.S., and they've been doing it for a long time before we realized that?
Well, so my stepdad, Dave, he traveled quite a bit back and forth. He'd be going to Asia every couple of weeks. And he didn't have anything like this, and his job has changed since then. But for the past decade plus, he was in Shanghai and all the different Asian, countries, on the regular. Sometimes even like you and I would drive to Columbus. He'd already been back and forth to Asia a few times. Right. But I do want to mention too, if you think about where these epicenters that they're talking about on the news, like New York City, New Orleans, Detroit, Chicago, big cities, a lot of the people that you mentioned go back and forth, to China. They come to these big metropolis areas. And that's kind of where, like you mentioned, one little story there with the guy who had a fishing store, times that by how many, in these big cities. And it's no surprise to see that New York's, in a state that it's in.
Right. And so that's why I say, the stats and looking at this curve, I'm not saying that it's wrong to look at them. I mean, we have to have something, but realistically, they don't matter. And now here's the last part in regards to the stats. Let's say I got in a car accident today and I ended up breaking my back or whatever, and I'm near death or whatever, and while I'm in the hospital, I end up contracting coronavirus. Regardless of whether or not I get the pneumonia that's associated with it afterwards, guess what my death is going to be labeled as?
COVID-19. Yeah.
I had people who talk about, again, Facebook's a wonderful thing for communication. You can't verify every little story, but I don't think a lot of people have reason to make some things up. Father was in for stage 4 cancer in hospice care for numerous months. At the end of his line, he was about to die. They test him for COVID-19. They list the cause of death as COVID-19. So that's not accurate.
Yeah, they're padding the stats.
I don't know the why on that. I don't know if it's a fear thing. I don't know if it's driving a vaccine or driving response. I really don't know. I don't see the benefit of it, but it's happening. And there's hundreds of stories like that. So,
and the other thing too is how many people aren't being tested. I'll tell a quick story from a hospital. I won't name the hospital, but I will. So Altman Hospital down in Canton, that's where my wife works. There was a coworker, and the coworker had a fever of over 102, and she wasn't feeling well, so they sent her home, and they never tested her or anything. And I think she had maybe, let's say, 4 or 5 days of not feeling well at all, and they. Once she kind of felt a little bit better, they brought her back in. But I think from the day that she had that fever to the day that she brought her back wasn't even a full week, which up until now, I thought it was if you had symptoms like that, they asked you to stay home for 2 weeks. So how are these hospitals bringing, coworkers back into the office to potentially spread this to other? And I'm going to use nurses as the word like soldiers. Like they're out there on the front line taking care of other people that come in. And this is specifically the emergency room. If this starts to spread and knock out other nurses, who's going to be the ones that are working? So I feel like sometimes, who knows this is just one story, but other mismanagement since this is such a new thing, and who knows how this is going to play out. But also, like, Allie's pregnant, and other pregnant women who are currently still working, puts them at a higher risk too at transmitting this and potentially having issues with the baby. And I don't know, it just seems like they're not quite sure how to handle it, but that's just one story that just recently was brought up this past week.
Yeah, and I don't know the situation in regards to the pregnancies.
But there was no testing, by the way, for this girl. She just came back to work, and at the same time, some people don't even have symptoms, and they can be a carrier of this. So it is scary. You don't know. You and I could have something, and we wouldn't even show symptoms.
I've had it with the discussion with my kids. They were at their mother's, and they had friends over. And I'm like, you guys can't do that. Now you got to stay away from me for a bit, because if I do get sick, I have to shut it down. I'm responsible enough. I'm going to shut it down, and I'm still seeing over 100 patients a week, so I can't do that. And A, I can't expose my patients. B, I can't risk my employees' ability to be able to work too, because if I shut down, what are they going to do? You know, they're going to sit around and clean? No, nobody's going to be coming in the office.
Yep.
So I tried to explain, even if I'm not really worried about if I got sick, I'd be fine. You know what I mean? But I'd still have to do the self-quarantine, and I'd have to be stuck at home for 2 weeks and not be able to do my job or pay my bills or pay my employees. So, I mean, it is different. Now, here's the next topic. I don't disagree with the procedure of having the avoidance for the purposes that we talked about in regards to not
transmission.
Yeah, and not overwhelming the hospital system. Okay.
Sure.
But let's be real, man. It's not going to go away. This virus is still going to be here in December. This virus is still going to be here next year. And we can't live our lives in bubbles. Forget about the economy. All right. Just forget about that, because that's an entirely different topic. And I have a lot of strong feelings on that. But you can't avoid this forever. So we get to, you know, we've all avoided it. We've all stayed home. But one person then decides to, or 2 or 3 people have it in a major city again come Thanksgiving, and then Trump's back on and he's going to be like, it's back. You know, we all gotta hunker down again, and we're going to go back into hiding. You can't do that, you know? So,
well, still to this day. So right now it's April 3rd as we're recording this. And we estimated October, November in Wuhan, China, that this was kind of all at its beginnings. There's still people today that it's still transmitting from person to person there, but there's people who've been in their homes for 15 weeks, you know? And if you think about that, they're maybe taking it a step further with shutting things down as far as not like leaving or whatnot, but that's incredible. And we've only been doing this for a couple of weeks. Can you imagine 15 weeks? And, it's incredible to think that it's still moving, but at the same time, that's what viruses do. They're going to move from person to person. Not to say the strong will survive, but the strongest immune systems will fend it off. And those who don't have, which is we're going to get into later in our podcast about things that we can be doing to boost the immune system. But just to further your point, viruses don't stop. They just keep moving. And if you get it and you beat it, you know, and you're going to be stronger, which we'll talk about here in a minute. You know, some studies that have been done with monkeys and whatnot, that you build that durable immunity for short term. And that's a good sign right now to see that once you get it, you can fight it off. You're not going to get it again, at least in the short term.
Yeah. I will touch real quick base on the economic factor. So let's say we do go into a full on depression. If we do that, you know, the death rate is actually much higher than what we're looking at for this disease, because we're going to have mass suicides and mass poverty and a lot of things that will create death just from the economic standard. So I won't go into it more than that, but people do have to be aware that there is a public health risk from being shut down for a long time, just from the economy stuff. So that's kind of what's good about their approaches is they're learning just some of the basic stuff about contagion. Okay, wash your hands for 20 seconds. I mean, look, how many times you've been at a Cavs game and seen dudes roll out of the restroom just without...
All the time.
So gross, man. Like, come on, wash your hands. I don't care.
And then they're high-fiving the guy next to them as soon as they get back to their seats.
So disgusting. Putting their hands all over everything and just grabbing all your paper towels. Don't do that. Wash your freaking hands. Use Purell. People were asking me, oh, are your hands all dry and cracked from all your sanitizer? I'm like, no, because I use Purell between every patient, and I wash my hands multiple times per day, and I sanitize my table. Maybe not as much as I'm doing it now, but I sanitize my table frequently, so it's not really drying out my hands or my skin, or it's not having any effect. I clean my stuff. I practice basic hygiene.
Yep.
Shower twice a day.
Which is fun. Yeah. It's so funny that it's almost like you have to broadcast or advertise now how clean you're keeping things, when it's like, come on, man, this is what you should have always been doing it this way.
Yeah. So, I mean, those types of things, the 6 feet away, the maybe not shaking hands or doing the whole not even elbow bump, and just, it's kind of weird. I don't like it. I'll be honest. I mean, chiropractors, we touch people just to treat them. So I'm used to shaking hands and I don't usually hug people, but I'll hug people occasionally, and family members and friends and stuff. It's weird. It's weird to not do that, So I get it, and I'm following all the guidelines. So those are good things about their current recommendations. Now, here's what's missing, and they're starting to touch on it just a teeny bit. If we can't avoid this thing forever, what's our answer? Go ahead. I know you know the answer because we've talked about it. What's our answer? If we can't avoid it, what's our answer?
I don't know where you're going with this.
Sorry. Gotcha. All right,
I'm sorry. I was looking where we were going next.
All right, edit that part out. No, boosting our own immunity is our answer.
The obvious answer. Yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, if that's where we have to be, then that's what we have to start talking about. So, in chiropractic, there's always this discussion of artificial versus natural immunity. Artificial being like from vaccines, and natural being like, actually exposed to the disease and exposed to the contagion. When we're exposed, our body has natural defense systems, and it doesn't have to have a full-on antibody response. Sometimes it's just, you're exposed to something, it never becomes an infection for you to be able to, or for you to need to produce antibodies from. But we have other defense systems other than specific antibodies to that. So we really want to try to do things to boost our immune system. We know that in science, there's little disagreement that natural immunity is a stronger style of immunity versus the artificial. There's always that vaccine debate. That's not what we're going into here, but nobody disagrees that if you have natural immunity, then it's going to be stronger than the artificial vaccinated or whatever. And provided you survive whatever you get exposed to. Yeah. So most chiropractors do hold that philosophy of building up your body's own defense systems so that when you do inevitably come into contact with whatever pathogen you're discussing, COVID-19 in today's, you're going to have a better chance of either A, not showing signs of infection, or B, recovering from it very quickly. So I think next did you want to touch on that monkey?
Yeah, I do. I do. So a couple things. I actually, as an essential healthcare provider, the chiropractor is in a unique position to assist patients during this time of heightened stress. So there's just like a few things that we want to touch on, just to make sure we're not, claiming things that aren't, as obvious at the moment. So although there's no clinical trials to substantiate a direct causal relationship between the chiropractic adjustment and increased protection from the COVID-19 virus, there is a growing body of evidence that there is a relationship between the nervous system, which we work on daily, and our body's immune system. So there's just something that I do want to kind of dive into as far as what happens to the chiropractic adjustment. Is that okay if we dive into that for a second? So I don't want to get too nerdy. I kind of want to aim right down the middle as far as not speaking above or below our audience. But there's lots of cool studies that we can always, share with our patients. And if anybody on this podcast would like any of these, we can always share it with them. We can email you these studies. But I just want to touch on, the spinal manipulation, which is the chiropractic adjustment, and its effect on what's called interleukin-2 production. And I'll dive in for a moment on what interleukin-2 is. So it's sometimes abbreviated as IL-2, and it is a type of cytokine signaling molecule within the immune system. It regulates activities of white blood cells that are responsible for immunity, and it's part of the body's natural response to infection. And it can discriminate between what's foreign, quote unquote, non-self versus quote unquote self. So let's put that into what the study kind of dives into. The study measures the effect of the spinal manipulation on selected parameters of the immune response. The study had 3 arms: the control group, a group that received spinal manipulation with cavitation, which is the audible release, and a spinal manipulation without cavitation. So the study's going to throw in like you hearing the noise of the chiropractic adjustment versus not. So don't worry about that too much, but we just want to show about IL-2 and what happened during the adjustment. The goal was to gather knowledge not only on the immune response, but also to determine if the cavitation provides a measurable difference in outcomes. The outcomes of the study included a statistically significant increase in the production of IL-2 in both of the arms of the study in which patients received spinal manipulation relative to baseline and to the other group at 20 minutes post-adjustment. An increase in IL-2 was also found 2 hours later. There were no differences between the two adjustment arms, meaning that the cavitations did not appear to change the outcomes. In this study, as with many others, the authors state, quote, "The biological mechanisms associated with the spinal manipulation are poorly understood," end quote. The authors also stated that earlier studies have demonstrated increased activity of the innate immune response components following a single spinal manipulation. The authors concluded that a single high-velocity, low-amplitude thrust, which is the chiropractic adjustment, to the thoracic spine of asymptomatic subjects causes a significant enhancement in IL-2 secretion in vitro. So it's pretty cool just to see what, just one example of when you get a chiropractic adjustment, what it can do to show just one of the biomarkers, showing an increase, after the adjustment, which is pretty awesome.
I know Dan Murphy kind of expanded on that and said that, at least his take on it was that it was the stretching of the spinal ligaments as opposed to like the cavitation and stuff. So that quick movement stretches the spinal ligament. So it doesn't matter whether you get the pop or not, but that quick stretch of that increases that. Now, again, that's it's not a super old study, but it's an older study, and it's definitely one that shows that there's more need for research as to what's out there. It's not like, oh my gosh, this is so convincing, everybody who's sick should go get an adjustment to feel better. But it's definitely a start. I mean, would you rather have that immune response, or would you rather not have that immune response?
Right.
And again, these were people who were not sick to start. They were asymptomatic, and then we're looking at blood markers. So was it specific to one disease or producing one set of antibodies? No. So there is limitation to that. And again, we are to be very clear, so I don't get a call from the board, we are not suggesting that a chiropractic adjustment will prevent you from getting coronavirus.
100%. And just to kind of further, a lot of the stuff that we try to talk about in our office and stuff, we wish we could get the funding that some medical companies can to, pad their arguments towards whatever drug they're trying to sell. When it comes to chiropractic, it's the individual kind of like a, small business, you and I, like, are we going to fund a big study? A lot of this stuff might need to happen at the educational level at our chiropractic colleges and doing some studies within, plus who wouldn't like that as a chiropractic student? You get your hands on more people, more experience. But if we can start to get some more of these studies and get some more of these numbers, then we have a better chance to have a conversation and actually be able to back it with more research. You and I can show or tell stories about what we see in our office, and we see themes of people not getting as sick, and they don't seem to have, the immune response to certain allergens or seasonal allergies or what have you. At the same time, it's just medicine wants to see research so that we can bring that to the forefront and actually have a conversation.
There's never going to be a study that's appropriate for chiropractic that's total double-blind randomized control trial. You can't do it. You can't pretend to adjust somebody necessarily because there's too many variables. You put your hand on somebody, so
the skin senses it. Yeah.
Yeah. There's always going to be that limitation. Somebody's going to know. And that's a concern. And somewhere along the line, I mean, we as a profession have to address that. I don't know how you're going to address it. I mean, even a sham surgery, when they do these things, they still cut these people and give them a scar.
Right.
Do these tests. So you don't think that has an effect? Of course it does. I mean, there's some effect to it. I know you didn't do what you said you were doing in that sham study, but very, very difficult to do these things for chiropractic. But going back to the coronavirus, talk about the monkey thing.
Yeah. So this is just from 2 weeks ago. And this is good news. So I know amidst all this, scare tactics and negativity, there is some good news. And this is actually in the population of, they did a study on macaque monkeys. I might be pronouncing that kind of funny, but macaque monkeys. And the study is is kind of nice because it does present what's called durable immunity in the short term. So I'll kind of dive into it a little bit. What they did was they infected this specific group of monkeys with the coronavirus. And just like you'd expect, they all came down with the common coronavirus symptoms and illness. And they waited until they fully recovered, all the monkeys fully recovered, and then they re-challenged them, re-exposed them to the coronavirus. And all of them were now protected and did not get sick for the second time. So they did different stuff. They did different blood markers. Again, there was something called PCR, which was negative, IgG, which was positive. And they also did a culture to look for the virus, and there was nothing. So they were, again, confirming what was called durable immunity in the short term. So that is good news. So it looks like if you do get it and you fight it off, you're going to be good to go for the short-term future.
Yep, and that's great. So, again, going back to that argument that we talked about, natural versus artificial immunity. So we do know that is kind of holding up. Again, more research is needed. Nothing's very definitive. This is kind of new in the research world, and you're asking people to have studies on something that normally would take years, and we're a couple months into knowing about this particular strain. But I mean, kind of the common sense extrapolation on a lot of this is saying, okay, that's going to be the case. Let's talk a little bit about stress and how stress affects the immune system, because right now we're all pretty freaking stressed out. And the news is constantly bleak for the most part. And you're not doing your normal routines. The freaking gyms are closed. I haven't worked out. Although I tore my chest a few weeks ago, the fascia in my chest, doing an adjustment of all things. So it couldn't be I guess if the gym has to be closed, it's not the worst time for me because I can recover and my volume's down at work. So at least I have some time to recover with that. But stress is super high. I mean, some people in good marriages, great marriages, that never see their spouse, and now they're stuck at home together and they're fighting.
They can't get away from them.
They're like, oh my God, why am I married to this person? That's not me, Courtney. That's not me. I'm just saying there's
stories from work.
Yeah, there's some weird things that are happening that's stressing us out. So I know we've talked about this before, but it bears repeating here. Stress decreases your immune response. Okay, so it increases the cortisol. The cortisol response will absolutely decrease your own personal immune function. Also, what else is going to happen when you're stressed out? Your blood pressure goes up. That makes you sicker. That makes you more susceptible to disease. What else happens?
Weight gain.
You're eating crazy. You're eating crap half the time because what's really out there if you're not cooking for yourself and you don't want to go to the grocery store? You're ordering in Arby's and Taco Bell and pizza, and most times people aren't ordering in a fruit salad.
Yeah.
All my friends who work in fast food or pizza, they're like, man, this is the busiest weeks ever, and they're loving it. But the sit down restaurants where you might get a little healthier meal, they're way down and wondering if they're going to even be able to stay open through this.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So the food sucks, and like I said, you don't get the exercise. Some people are getting out, which is finally turning a little bit nicer here in Ohio. It's like 50 some degrees. We had one day this past weekend, which was 70. That was cool. But the other part about it is just our mood in general. Our mood is going to change our brain chemicals and our brain hormones, and all of those have a negative effect on the nervous system, which in turn, like we talked about, depresses our immune response. So a couple of the things that, we can do on a good note to maybe improve that response. Other, we talked about chiropractic. We'll touch on that briefly again. But what else can we do? Turn off the freaking news. It's 97% coronavirus. I'm glad that a lot of people are talking like Netflix binging and watching some other stuff other than the news. And I'm guilty. I'm not gonna lie. I'm guilty of catching a little too much of the news. But I've also caught up on a lot of things on Netflix and pulled out my PlayStation 4 controllers and started playing Spider-Man and Mortal Kombat and all kinds of other fun things that I can do just to chill out and relax.
I'll touch on this a little bit too, if you don't mind, just a couple of these things. So number one, turn off the news. I mean, you can get your little 5 minutes here and there if you want to get updated on numbers or what have you. I mean, this thing isn't going away anytime soon. So, if you do turn it on, prepare yourself just for what you're going to hear, which I know sounds kind of silly, but, just if you could get away from it, as far as meditation, I'm going to touch on each of these points, bringing it back to a few months ago when we started to do these podcasts, we always share with people, the Calm app. And I know there's other apps out there, but just 10 minutes of that first thing in the morning before you turn on the news, before you get out of bed, even just to get some positivity and just to get some just brain fuel, really, just to get your mind right for the day and maybe decompress before you walk it out of your bedroom into this crazy world and get exposed to your social media and all that too. The Calm app has really helped me. I know you're speaking very highly of it as well too, Craig. As far as eating well, you guys watch the sugar. Sugar always will dampen the immune system, kind of open it up like Swiss cheese, and just creates more inflammation in the body. And I think you did. You said it best a couple episodes back with Fat Bastard. Maybe you could say, I eat because I'm unhappy. I'm unhappy because I eat.
I eat because I'm unhappy. And I'm unhappy because I eat.
It almost sounds like Shrek's the donkey from Shrek.
The same dude. Oh, no, not the donkey. It's the Shrek. It's Shrek, man.
Yes. No, it's very good. Right. It's very good.
I do my. I was trying to do a Trump earlier, man. I was going to do a really good Trump, and I couldn't get it.
Well, you can try before the episode's up if you just want to bust it out. But eat well. Make sure you guys are eating enough. If you guys are getting out and going hiking and doing some stuff, I know Allie and I have been trying to get out as much as possible. I can't tell you, just like any other workout, whenever you finish your workout, you're never like, man, I wish I didn't do that workout. Same thing with getting out and hiking or walking around the neighborhood. You always feel a little bit better, and there's just so many benefits of getting outside now that the sun's getting out too. Get a little bit of vitamin D, help boost that immune system too. As far as exercising, I know you've been putting out some stuff that you can be doing at home. I'm sharing pretty much every day, if not every other day, some home workouts. Just something simple with dumbbells. You can get a great workout with just a little bit of floor space in your basement or your garage, and maybe go up to an open field and strap a kettlebell around your waist and walk around. Just or put a weighted vest on or something just to add a little more of the difficulty. And then this is kind of cool too. You mentioned about Skype, FaceTime, Zoom, or a house party. A couple of my buddies and I, we did just guys we haven't seen in a couple of months, which just really there's no excuse for it. We did a FaceTime group call and it was awesome. Like got a chance, kind of like this, just split screen. There was like 5 or 6 of us. And as the one person talks, it kind of brings that person a little bit more into focus. And I don't know, 30, 40 minutes. It was awesome just to catch up. And we kind of said, hey, let's do this once a week just so we can kind of keep in touch. And there's really no excuse, even if you're working from home, you got to take breaks at some time, and it was a lot of fun. And again, at the end of this was all to de-stress, so, pick and choose things that maybe you haven't been able to do, even like mobility work. Like I've gotten so much more time now just to kind of work on some of my old injuries, kind of like you said, with your pec there. Just stuff that maybe with a normal work schedule, you just don't make time for, it's just not on your radar as far as importance. So those are just some stuff that we wanted to touch on there too. Just anything to increase a positive mood and to lower that cortisol really. And then also sleep, if you want to touch on that a little bit too, if you're not getting enough sleep, you're not recovering, and cortisol, which we go back to you being too stressed out, increasing cortisol will commonly you'll see weight gain, water retention, sleep issues, inflammation go up, irritability, obviously, because you're stressed. But the cortisol just really is something that we got to make sure we find ways to lower.
Yeah. And we didn't really touch on it, but the biggest people who are finding these death rates with the infections are people who have other things going on with them. They're smokers.
Comorbidities, if you guys have heard that term.
They're smokers. They're massively overweight. They have diabetes. They have whatever else they got going on. We're sitting at home and kind of sometimes creating these things if we don't take advantage of the time we have. If we're sitting here, mowing down on Cheez-Its and Pop-Tarts, I might have done that one day. But if we're doing that, we're not doing ourselves a service. We're actually making it more of a problem and, again, decreasing that immunity that's out there. So talk about specific
some nutrition
stuff. I just want to say real quick, one of the things that I'm doing, I'm a big fan of standard process. Vitamin C. They have something called Cataplex C. I'm taking tons of that. I'm additionally eating like that's already whole food, but I'm also eating an orange or so every day, trying to get a little bit more fruit, some antioxidants. I take an andrographis complex that contains an echinacea. That's an herbal that helps to prevent infection, and I always use it whenever I get a cold or something. If I start to feel it coming on, usually if I take 1 andrographis or 2 andrographis that day, I'm like good the next day. So I'm taking it kind of prophylactically, preventatively at this point. Catalin is their multivitamin. I've been taking that every single day. I always take that anyways. Omega-3 fatty acids. They have a tuna version. I've been taking that. And then D. I am still seeing patients, so I don't get a ton of time to get outside. And, so I'm taking that as well. So those are all things that I do from a supplemental standpoint, really ramping up on those. I know calcium's a big one too. What are you doing in regards to, of course, your nutrition and what you're eating, talk about what you're eating. And then if there's any extra supplements you're taking, touch on that.
Yeah. So I honestly, I look at it as too, like everyone wants to get healthy yesterday, and so a lot of the stuff I've just been doing for years anyways, but maybe I just kind of ramp it up a little bit, but kind of like what you're saying, just a little list. I'm sure I'm leaving off some, but through the years, vitamin D's got to be number one. We're just not outside enough to get it naturally. So I'll supplement with that every day. There's been some pretty cool studies with intravenous vitamin C. I'm not taking it intravenously. I'll take it orally. But fighting off viruses, this is nothing new. They've treated viruses with vitamin C, high dose vitamin C for a long time. So I take orally vitamin C. Have you heard of N-acetylcysteine, also called NAC? It's another antioxidant that I'll take along with selenium, and I'll do some zinc in there as well. But yeah, for the most part, I haven't really dabbled much with elderberry. I know a lot of my patients love it. I'm just not into syrups. I really do try to watch the sugars just with my diet specifically. I am a big fan of eating more high fat and protein. I just feel like sugar feeds bacteria. Sugar can feed other, things when it gets out of hand. And plus sugar feeds wanting more sugar. And sometimes I used to be 50 pounds heavier, and my body loves to pack it on if I'm not careful. So I do kind of choose more things that don't mess with insulin too much. But I do like to take, I'm kind of into glycine powder, which is, it is sweet, but I'll do it first thing in the morning with some mineral water, and it'll fizz and bubble. But glycine is actually, I think it's the most abundant amino acid in the body, because it's with collagen. So it's kind of the formation of collagen. So as I've been taking more of that, man, my nails and my skin, they obviously I can't see my skin grow, but my nails will grow a lot faster. My hair will grow a lot faster, but it kind of helps with, soft tissue and rebuilding collagen. So I'll take that in the morning and at night. And then also apple cider vinegar. I'll put a shot of that in water first thing in the morning, chug that down with some pink Himalayan salt. And that's kind of how I start my day. It gets other things moving in the body too, which I won't get into, but yeah, man, it's, just kind of those things that you can either acutely or chronically boost the immune system. And I want to touch on one more thing too, because you have the luxury of having it at your home, which now that the gyms are closed, I can't go do it. But apparently the coronavirus doesn't like heat. And if you know where I'm going with this, there's just a couple tips that, I've continuously see that kind of help maybe just shut it down. Number one is the sauna. I know they're showing infrared versus actually high heat. But, getting in the sauna, acutely increasing body temperature to around 101.5 to 102.5 is kind of what helps kind of fend this thing off. Exercise, keeping the basal metabolic rate high, wearing warm clothes, sweating, steam baths. And they've even said go as far as set your thermostat at home to 74 degrees Fahrenheit, which I know we're not going to do, but it's just one of those things where apparently this thing doesn't like heat. So if you can get into your sauna a couple times a week, you might just be a little better off.
Yeah. And, to that note, I know we'll just briefly mention in regards to if you do have a fever, of course, get checked. And I'm not saying not to get checked. If you do have a fever and you have all the symptoms, go get a test, see what you need to do. But, suppressing this fever and suppressing fever in general is not always the best idea. You want to control a fever. You want to control it, but if you suppress it, you're hindering your body's ability to actually respond to this. So at least briefly, now they've kind of walked it back, and I don't know if it was under pressure from medicine companies or what, but at least briefly they were really saying, don't take ibuprofen, which is everybody's favorite pain reliever, it seems like, during this pandemic, because they thought that it might actually directly decrease your ability to fight off the coronavirus. Now, indirectly, I think you and I have already talked about this. We agree that indirectly, the effects on the body that ibuprofen have, they're not really going to be beneficial for the immune system. It destroys some of the gut bacteria and some of the lining in there, and it's not going to be beneficial to you in the long run. But now they've walked it back. So this is the World Health Organization, though. But as recently as March 17th, they were advising people don't take ibuprofen. So that's out there. The exercise, man, you got 8 billion mobility videos out there, so I don't think we would need to spend a whole lot of time on this. But in regards to exercising while you're at home, like you said, a couple dumbbells and some cardio. It doesn't take anything to walk around the block. You don't need to go out to a park that's totally crowded and has 300 people in the park, and walk around your freaking neighborhood.
Some bands too, something simple as some resistance bands.
Basic stuff. There's lots of home gym equipment that'll deliver to you. You don't need anything super fancy. I'm lucky I have quite a few cardio pieces, and like we said, we have the sauna, and I've got dumbbells up to 30. I have like a 40-pound and a 50-pound kettlebell, and I have some other little resistance equipment. So, I mean, I'm pretty well set, but I hate working out at home. I like doing cardio at home. I hate doing strength training at home. So I'm probably getting a little bit smaller here, and that's all right.
Just have to zoom in on the camera more.
Right. I will say, for a lot of you guys who are working at home now, you got to get up. You can't be on the chair the whole time. You still got to get up and move. The body is designed to move, and stasis is going to hinder your normal production of your healthy hormones and your normal production of antibodies that you would normally have. So my cousin had asked something about, what can you do when you're sitting all day to keep your stomach tight? Well, I know you're sitting on a ball right now.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it actually needs a little air, but yep.
My friend, get an air compressor.
I know.
I get that thing filled up a little bit. But yeah, sit on a ball, man, move around, create that motion in both the spine and the body. If you can do that and you can find a place to work that way, that's good. If not, you've got a high kitchen counter. You can stand for a while. If you're on a computer, take calls while you're walking around. If you've got headphones like you've got in, or Bluetooth or whatever, you can walk around your neighborhood if you've just got to be on phone calls. So there's some really basic stuff. I don't really want to go into like every single exercise that you can do at home. You get the internet for that. And like I said, check out Jim's mobility videos, because those are going to be all things that are all very easy to do with things you already have at home.
And it's consistency, right? Like once an hour, get up, walk around for a minute. It's something as simple as that. You wouldn't think it, but after 8 hours, if you got up and broke that into, once an hour, you moved around, your spine's going to feel so much better. And remember through, I'm not saying remember for you, but for other people out there that might be listening, your spine rehydrates with movement. So you gotta, if you're sitting on a ball like this, tilt the pelvis forward, tilt the pelvis backwards, kind of maybe do like a little bit of like a hula hoop movement just for a couple, seconds here and there can really make a difference. But then if you're sitting in a chair like that, maybe just get up and stand for 30 seconds every 30 minutes, or get up and stand for 60 seconds every 60 minutes, just something like that can redistribute the weight onto the different parts of the spine, and it won't feel so darn stiff after a long day of now working from home.
Yep. And then finally, back to, our bread and butter chiropractic. We are considered in the country by the CISA guidelines that are out there, and they have specifically mentioned chiropractic as an essential field. And people will think, well, why is that? You're not saving lives necessarily. You're not, fighting the coronavirus at the front lines, but threefold on that. Number one, if you're in pain, that does increase your stress. So we are helping people to even if you want to say it's indirectly, let's say it's totally indirect. We are helping people to have a better immune system simply by keeping their stress low, because pain will increase stress, pain will decrease immunity. So if we're keeping people out of pain, we're helping their immune systems. Number two, we're keeping the ER and the urgent cares and the primary cares from having an influx of pain patients by continuing to stay open. That was the biggest thing for me when people were asking, and before there were guidelines of who's essential, who's not. People were like, are you going to close? And I'm like, no. Like, where are people going to go? You're going to sit there and take somebody, and maybe missing one adjustment isn't a big deal, but here we are in week 3 of this, and it's going to continue on through the month. I have some patients that I promise you that if they had to go 6 weeks without getting an adjustment, they absolutely will end up in their primary care, an urgent care, or an ER with pain. Mm-hmm. You know, I know you deal with chronic pain patients like that. You and I do a lot of like wellness patients and sports related patients. So not everybody's like that, but many chiropractors across the country deal with chronic pain very regularly. Mm-hmm. So we have to be there.
We have to be there. This is what we do. This is what our calling is, and we love it. So it's not like you're like, some people are like, well, are you going to keep going into work? They're going to have to drag me out of my office to not sit there and help people. Like, this is, I literally was, we talked about this episode 1. I was born into a chiropractic family. You know, I love everything about this. I get adjusted every 2 weeks. You and I just hooked up the other day to tune each other up, and I felt so much better after that. But touching on the pain, someone being in pain, it leads to anxiety, depression, you know, all these other things that may even starting to tag into like the mental health category. So now you're going to see these patients who, let's just say if chiropractic was asked to not do their thing anymore and they weren't considered essential, you're going to see people like not only bombarding the ERs for their pain issues, but now they're going to be asking for pain meds, which can lead to a whole nother, you know, I don't want to say, but, you know, they're on the medical treadmill for how long now, you know, for other issues, when before that everything was kosher and feeling great with their chiropractic care, you know? So yes, I do see a lot of people who come in, even like for once a month, they want to come in for a tune-up because they just feel that much better. They're sleeping better. Maybe they're recovering from their workouts more efficiently. So yeah, I just can't say enough good things. And this is not the time. I'm just really glad that they deemed us essential. It would seem like a no-brainer, but you know, now that we're officially there, it's great. You know, the doors are going to stay open until they're not, you know. So
and lastly, you know, with that, when I said threefold, I forgot what the third was for a second. But the third one is we can go out to the grocery store, right? And we can do all these things, but we as humans do need face-to-face contact and touch and stuff that we're limiting. So at least at a chiropractic office, when you go in to get adjusted, you're doing things that are positive for your health. You're keeping yourself out of the ER. And finally, you're getting that little bit of face-to-face contact in an environment where, you know, I'm cleaning this. I could eat off my floors right now, you know, and I know yours is the same. Yep. We're taking every possible precaution. I've got no more fabric chairs. All my chairs are either leather or plastic that you can wipe down. I got rid of my waiting room. I don't have anybody sign in. Nobody has to touch a pen. You stand up, you walk. If you don't even want to sit in one of the chairs, you don't have to. You can stand there, and the next place you're going to be is on my chiropractic table, my freshly sanitized chiropractic table, with only my hands being on you, and you're out. You know, you might have to pay or something with a credit card or whatever. We've got Purell all over the place. Thank goodness I have people who work at Gojo as patients of mine, so I've been well stocked with Purell for even before.
Clutch. Yep.
So, I mean, those are the things that I think we need to be doing. And somewhere along the line, we've talked a lot about this. We've been talking for almost an hour here, but somewhere along the line, we're going to have to move towards more of the, hit the microphone. Sorry. We're going to have to move to more of what we're talking about now and get away from this just avoidance, because like I said, it's not going to work, man. You can't avoid this stuff forever. So we're going to have to start talking more about improving your own health. And we in the States, man, we're not good at it. We're not, you know, some of us are great, but a lot of us are not. We got a lot of those comorbidities we were talking about. So,
you know, and guys, one more thing too is, you know, if there's anything that we can do for you, I know that you guys know that we're up here in Ohio. Maybe you're listening from another state or another country. If there's any way that we can help you find someone in the chiropractic realm, in your neighborhood, just reach out to us, and we're happy to do so. And, I just think that you're going to be a lot more pleased, a lot happier, and feeling better too, when you do introduce chiropractic to your healthcare team. It's something that we really hold near and dear to our hearts, but we also want you guys to go out and experience it too and be rocking and rolling on our level.
Yeah. And if I know that telemedicine doesn't really work for chiropractic necessarily. I mean, we can give nutrition and stretching and, watch people do, but our job's hands-on. So it's very tough to do exactly what you and I do the way we do it from a telemedicine standpoint. But I know that there's doctors out there, and I'm probably going to jump on the bandwagon here a little bit and do some visits that maybe don't require as much. If I can talk somebody through in a 15-minute phone call or a video call, I'll probably do some of that. And there's others that are out there that are doing it too. So we have the ability to help you. And if you need something from us specifically, absolutely let us know. I think we'd be happy to do that.
For sure.
All right, man. Well, I think we've covered coronavirus as much as we could possibly. So which do you like? Do you like the COVID-19 or coronavirus?
I don't know. I just hate everything about it. I really just want this thing to, I don't want to say move through, but I'm ready for us to get back to, I don't want to say like the old days, but like the new normal, but minus this thing, like maybe we had some downtime to figure things out, maybe check in with ourselves, and sometimes it's nice to have a little downtime, but yeah, as far as the name goes, I don't care. Coronavirus is funny. I still think of a Corona beer for some reason. Maybe it's all the memes that are out there, but sure. COVID-19 sounds real scientific. So maybe we'll go with that.
I just wonder which.
How about you?
I just wonder which they'll do in the long term. You know what I mean? I don't. Well, I think they're going to say coronavirus when it comes to the history books.
Well, so coronavirus, like you mentioned earlier in the podcast, you have SARS and MERS. So it seems like if those are coronavirus, like is coronavirus, is it viruses? I think it's viruses. Coronavirus. If they are a certain type of coronavirus, then I feel like COVID-19 is specific because it doesn't the 19 pertain to 2019 when it started?
Maybe.
I think so. I think the way that the name is written out, like that's kind of how it is. So I don't know. We're not there yet. This thing's still early. We'll see where we're at here in a month or two. Yep.
So we'll probably get back on here. Maybe the next topic we will not be discussing this. We'll still probably be Skyping it just because we're trying to behave ourselves. Like I said, I just saw you 2 days ago in the office. I really wasn't worried about but I was sort of worried about the optics of doing a side-by-side interview. And people are like, what are you doing? You're not social distancing. Well, I get it. But like I said, I'm seeing 100 plus people a week to treat. So I can't totally do it and still do my job. So
yeah,
and I'm doing.
No, we'll do some. Hopefully, we'll do these more frequently, and then we'll talk about things that are more in our wheelhouse. And we're not experts in this, but we're learning just like you guys are. We're just trying to bring some facts forward and just kind of share what's the most updated info.
Yeah, and from our perspective, I think it's just a little bit different from maybe the mainstream.
So with some optimism in there.
I think so. I think so. As long as
I think so too.
Continue to improve our own health, and it's what we all need to do anyways. Absolutely. So going forward, like you said, maybe a new normal, people will start to pay more attention to their own health and to their own immune system, to their own function. One of the guys, one of my old rugby players, asked, what do you think will change in regards to the healthcare system going forward? And there was a ton of range of answers, but my thought process was essentially what we just said is, I do hope that the healthcare system really starts pushing prevention and rewarding prevention, rewarding immune boosting behaviors and health boosting behaviors. I don't see how somebody, in my case, like I can't even, my insurance and stuff is like unaffordable. They look at me and I'm massively overweight because my BMI is high, but I challenge a lot of people to find too many people much healthier. But we have to start saying, okay, does somebody go to the gym? Do they not smoke? And then there's a couple of those things, but we need to find a better way to incentivize people with that, whether it be tax breaks or better cuts on insurance or whatever. I hope that that's what comes out of this. The people who are eliminating those comorbidities who will then ultimately tax the public health system less, get some incentive to do that. So that's my thoughts.
Well, it makes sense. Like State Farm, you see these other insurance companies, when you drive safe, you get a discount. So if you're driving safe in this vehicle of a body, you know, and you're doing all the right things, why not reward you financially? Or I don't know. I'm right there with you, man. I mean, this didn't just happen overnight. Not to say I'm where I want to be, you know, but I'm just trying every year to be better than the year before. And hopefully by the end of this, you know, I'm strong enough to fight off things like, you know, COVID-19. And all you can do is try, you know, at the end of the day.
All right. Well, listen, I think we're probably wrapped up. I want all of our viewers to stay calm, stay healthy, and keep in touch with us as much as you can. Of course, we're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Check out Jim's page, Rubber City Cairo.
Yep.
For some of the mobility stuff on Instagram mostly. I know he's got it on Facebook as well.
Mm-hmm. Twitter here and there, but Twitter you can only put so much. So
Twitter's kind of.
Well, we have Twitter for optimal function as well,
I do very little on Twitter.
Yeah, Instagram and Facebook they're really easy to work with.
Yeah, and I've got Pinnacle Cairo, and we have. I do a lot of stuff just on my personal stuff, so feel free to reach out. And otherwise, guys, take care.
Have a great day, guys. See ya.